them.
Here's what our attorneys make us say. We believe all the information we offer on this program is factual and up to date. However, we cannot guarantee its accuracy, and you should not think of it as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. We are also not giving you an offer to buy or sell the investments we talk about. All investments involve varying degrees of risk, and we cannot guarantee any specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for your portfolio. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.
You've worked hard and saved for retirement, but remember, it's what you do with that money that really matters. How will you ensure that you wring every nickel out of your Social Security benefits? Could you pay fewer taxes in retirement? And how and when will you withdraw money from your IRA or 401k? Welcome to Secured Retirement Radio with Joe Lucy of Secured Retirement Financial. Joe's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and has nearly 25 years of helping people just like you. This is where you can count on straightforward and objective advice on how to make your money go further in retirement. And now, here's your host, Joe Lucy.
Nope. If you were unexpectedly called into the boss man's office and they let you go or offered you an early retirement package, how prepared would you be to retire? According to research featured in USA Today, 60%, 6 out of 10 of hard-working Americans end up unexpectedly retired. You're joining us this morning on Secured Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy. In the St. Louis Park studio with me this morning, I got Sam Andrews and Dylan Malberg. We got a full house, and we got a great show for you. Woody Allen once said, if you want to make God laugh, well, then share him your plans. You plan to retire at a certain age, very likely, and you plan to retire once you've achieved some savings goal. Everybody has at least some kind of loose plan as to when they plan to retire. But things don't always go according to plan, do they? The statistics say that the odds aren't in your favor. 6 out of 10 of us will be retiring earlier than we want, and you may not be able to retire in your own terms. So it's because you're forced out of a job, maybe there's an unexpected illness, maybe it's a family member with an illness, or you're called to care for a parent, a child, something else. And when you're caught off guard like this, well, that's when you may end up making some very financially expensive mistakes. So coming up on today's program, we're going to arm you with 4 simple strategies that can help you better retire securely. Something that's going to make sure that these are some simple things that you can do right now that are going to help you prepare to be prepared for the unexpected. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Joe. Morning, Sam.
Good morning.
I guess the first step, as far as if you're in this 60% of Americans that could be retiring unexpectedly, and it very well could be the fastest and safest way to really look at growing your wealth, and it's mostly overlooked, but it's making sure you have a plan in place to reduce or even eliminate taxes in retirement.
Well, keep in mind that a lot of us think of our investments as the financial planning. It's all about what are my returns? How are we doing so far? But really getting ready for the unexpected a lot of times has to do about looking past just the investment strategies and, well, how do I start preparing for things like we said here in this first segment? How do I make sure that I am better positioned tax-wise? How do I make this money last if I find myself retired? Are you at a point that, let's say that there were 3 bad days. I call it the 3 bad day rule. Do you have a plan in place so that you know that if you walked into the office on Monday morning and it wasn't a very good day and Tuesday didn't look any better, by Wednesday, are you at a point that you know that you could walk away and retire securely? If not, I think that's where you need to start thinking about trying to get to.
Exactly, and I think there's a difference here, too, between tax prep and tax planning.
Absolutely there is. Tax prep is what we do. Well, many of us have still got our returns out there with the tax preparer. We bring that shoebox to them, and a week or 2 later, maybe they will sit down with us and show us the good news or, well, the bad news. we owe or we're going to get a refund. But tax planning is really about looking forward. It's about looking at how that tax return is going to look in a year, in 5 years, and 10 years, and are there ways that we can better plan accordingly to how that money is going to come back tax efficiently?
Yeah, and you think about an unexpected retirement. Well, if you lose your job, we now don't have that paycheck, and if we have to start replacing paychecks for the majority of Americans, we're going to be looking at replacing that with withdrawals from our retirement accounts, which now brings in a whole nother potential avalanche of taxes around the withdrawals on those accounts. What happens if we're on Social Security? What happens to the Social Security checks, Medicare premiums? We have to bring into consideration all these things that can happen when we start withdrawing from these retirement accounts.
Exactly, Dylan. And I think even with what's happened here over the last 12 months with COVID, I mean, a lot of people are suddenly finding that they're going to maybe have to retire a little bit earlier than they originally planned.
So let's start thinking about some of these things that we need to start thinking about. And we're seeing this here with COVID, right? As families were going home, they were getting the stimulus packages and their unemployment checks, but a lot of Americans were finding out that I start Social Security, there can be a negative impact on that. If I take a pension, what's the ramifications of that? Am I still qualifying for different things? Did I get the $1,400 check? Joe Lucy didn't see it, but I know a lot of families got that, and it certainly helped in those situations. The real question is, as we start thinking about how 6 out of 10 of us may retire unexpectedly, are you at a point with your planning that you really know that you could walk away at any time and be able to retire in comfort, knowing that there's that security that you're going to make that income last a lifetime? One of the biggest expenses in retirement, we think it could be health care. We think it could be long-term care. The reality is it's probably going to be taxes. How do we make sure that we have a plan in place? And if you're really just relying on tax preparation, dropping that shoebox off, getting the stuff back, and finding out good news, bad news, I got to write a check or I get a refund, that's not tax planning that we're talking about. We're talking about how do we systematically put together a plan on how to substantially reduce taxes. And don't forget, we are at 40-year lows in our current tax environment.
I'm glad you mentioned 40-year lows, and looking at the future, everything that we're hearing coming out of Washington is higher tax rates they're coming, whether they say it's the over 400,000 and those rich guys out there, but you just kind of dive in the numbers a little bit. It's really looking at making assumptions on really are those tax hikes going to come and fall on you in your specific situation?
Exactly, Dylan. And I think what's happened here over the last 12 months, I mean, we've put close to $6 trillion into the national deficit. There's talks about doing another $2 to $3 trillion for the infrastructure bill.
Infrastructure bill. Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. For infrastructure planning, isn't it funny how a lot of times the names of these bills don't necessarily come back to what the money's really going for. But either way, we've got $6 trillion added to the debt. We've got another $2 trillion very likely pending. It sounds like they're going to try to have us with maybe a 51st state, and who knows what the changes are with that. But the reality is, if I am only focusing on investments, if I'm only looking at my returns over the last 12 months or last 5 years, that's really not a plan in place about how to take the money back or how to make sure it's tax efficient. You want to start thinking today, while we still have an opportunity here before we see taxes go through the roof, on how I can put myself in a better situation. So, as we started off the show, I walk in the office for the boss. They tell me that there's a package. Am I able to walk away knowing that I have everything in place and that I don't have to worry about what my retirement plan is going to be? And if you don't have that, I encourage you to reach out to us, because most people overlook that the fastest and safest way to grow your nest egg right now could very well be just looking at tax reduction strategies. After all, the less people or the less money that you pay into the IRS, the more money you actually have in your pocket that you can spend on you and your family. That's why we are making this very special offer this morning on Secure Retirement Radio just for the loyal listeners that are joining us here today. You can learn how you can reduce, sometimes even eliminate taxation altogether in retirement with a free secured retirement tax analysis. It's fairly simple. When we get some basic information from you, we're going to determine some tax-efficient, tax-saving strategies that are best suited for your specific tailored needs. I'll take that information, I'll bring it down to our lab, and then we'll sit back down with you, and we're going to share these strategies with you. Some of these are very simple. Some of them are just defensive strategies, but you can see exactly how much money you could save with some straightforward, look-forward tax planning strategies. Now, tax savings sometimes is tens of thousands. We've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the only way you're going to know what that means for you is to give us a call right now, request your secured retirement tax analysis. It's absolutely no cost, no obligation for those of you that are calling this morning. The number is 952-777-8838. That's 952-777-8838. These proposals are on the table right now, unraveling our current tax cuts, so the time could be running out. The number is 952-777-8838.
96% of Americans lose out on an average of $111,000 in Social Security income. And when we come back, we'll share with you how to prevent this from happening.
That's Dylan Wahlberg. I'm Joe Lucy, Certified Financial Planner. We also got Sam Adams with us, Andrews this morning. Back in a little bit with more Secure Retirement Radio.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. You may not realize this, but he's kind of a big deal. Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio with your host, Joe Lucy.
She came in and she drove away.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. You may not realize this, but he's kind of a big deal. Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio with your host, Joe Lucy.
All right, so you've probably already made plans on how and when you plan to retire. But according to research out of USA Today, there's a 6 in 10 chance that you aren't going to necessarily retire on your own terms. You may get downsized out of a job. It could be an unexpected illness. It could be a pandemic. It could be that you're called to care for an aging parent or possibly a child, grandchildren. There's a lot of different reasons, but the $64,000 question is this. If you were forced to retire today, if you had 3 bad days in the office and had just had enough, how ready would you be? Welcome to Secured Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy in the St. Louis Park studio. Joining me this morning, we got a full house. We got Sam Andrews, I got Dylan Wahlberg, and we're talking this morning about why having a 60% chance of retiring unexpectedly, how that can impact your retirement, and the 4 steps that you can take today to make sure that you are better prepared for it. Coming up in this segment, how you can avoid losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in Social Security income that's rightfully yours.
Exactly. And in our last segment, of course, we covered taxes and how reducing those is a big way to save.
Maybe the biggest expense we have in retirement that a lot of families are overlooking in their current investment planning.
Exactly. In this segment, we're going to focus on the Social Security.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to start with Social Security. A lot of families do take it at face value, and if we think about really how much gets contributed out of your paychecks to Social Security, everyone thinks about it. Let's think about the 401k, the retirement accounts for a second. Usually, you put in 3, your employer is going to match 3, or maybe you get 4 or 50% for every dollar up to a certain amount, whatever it is. Well, for Social Security, you're putting in 6.2% of all of your earnings into the Social Security system, and on top of that, your employer is putting in that 6.2%. So there's 12.4% of your earnings every year that's going into Social Security, and by overlooking it, 12.4% of your earnings over all your earnings that you've had, this could be one of the biggest financial decisions you make in your life.
Well, and it's maybe one of the biggest financial investments you've made over your lifetime. And let's think about this. I don't know what the exact number is right now, but in the past, we know that the average worker is saving less than 4% a year into their retirement savings. So if I've got 12% plus going into Social Security, this may be one of the biggest investments over time that you've made. We want to get what's ours. We want to make sure we're wringing every nickel out of it. And there's a variety of reasons for it. But I think that maybe the biggest reason that we are such big proponents on making sure that you get your Social Security right is because it really comes down to mailbox income. Mailbox income is money that hits the checkbook each and every month in retirement, regardless of what's going on Wall Street. All too often, I unfortunately see families that have made these decisions around Social Security without really looking at the full impact. This is a tax-efficient income. It's something that by itself would be 100% tax-free. We got to avoid the tax torpedo. That's when all of a sudden other sources of income create taxation on this tax-free income. And it's going to be there for a lifetime regardless of who you are. That's part of the promise here. And I think that if we look at the alternatives, I'm a firm believer that Social Security will be there for us, even if you're in your 50s. But it's ours to make sure we're optimizing. It's a big investment. Let's make sure we get this right.
Well, exactly. And according to Forbes, there's 2,728 rules in the Social Security handbook. On top of that, there's hundreds of thousands of rules about those rules. We got to make sure that we're looking at the Social Security and how to optimize it. Like you said, Joe, there's no one size fits all strategy.
Right. So there's the math piece of this. There's the rules around the rules. How do we mathematically try and put together a strategy between whether it's yourself or you and your spouse? When do we take it? What age? 62 and a half, 62? Do we wait till 70? What does my husband or wife do? There's that piece of it. That's how we mathematically maximize it. But when we start talking about optimizing Social Security is where we have to start bringing into other things into consideration, like taxes and withdrawals from retirement accounts, required minimum distributions that are out there in the future that we may not be thinking about today.
Well, and don't forget we still see a lot of families that are missing out on Social Security benefits that are rightfully theirs. They just weren't aware that they were available to them right now. And sometimes these benefits can be taken, and it doesn't impact your own working history, Social Security. In other words, if you had a benefit, we see this sometimes with survivors. Surviving spouse may have widower benefits that are rightfully theirs. They could be started as early as age 60. It doesn't change what their own Social Security benefits are ultimately going to be. But by missing this money that's rightfully theirs, they could be very well walking across $2,000, $2,500 each and every month. And when you think about what that does to help bridge to optimize, as Dylan said, it's not necessarily about just maximizing. You want to know how to maximize Social Security? Google it right now. How do I Social Security calculator? And they're going to tell you to wait till 70 if you're a married couple. For most families, that's not the best way to do it. That's probably the two biggest things we see, right, Sam? We got somebody that either waits too long, they both are waiting till 70. There are reasons why you want to do that. Or they take it right away at 62, and there's reasons to do that. Or they just wait till full retirement age, 67. But what about 63, 64? How does it look if you take it at 68? What if one takes it later, one takes it earlier? That's what optimization is. It's about making sure you're getting the most out of your benefits that fits into your own tailored financial situation.
Well, exactly, and bringing back into the tax discussion as well, right? I mean, 85% of Social Security benefit as it stands right now, you can be taxed on, which means 15% of it is tax-free.
Well, and if 15% of it's tax-free, and I got two sources of income, one out of an IRA that I could take $3,000 a month from, or one out of Social Security, and that Social Security, 15% of it's tax-free, it obviously is going to stretch a lot further. So it's really about making smart and savvy decisions around Social Security. Really part of the reason that I wrote the book, The Retiree's Guide to Social Security, was to help families, like the listeners here on Security Retirement Radio, make sure that they are optimizing this, not necessarily just focusing on how to get the most out of it.
No, and you have to make sure that you're working with someone that's going to take all these into consideration and be able to put a plan together on, not just mathematically how do I take my Social Security, but how do I take into consideration taxes, retirement accounts, how do my investments bring into it, maybe you have some interest and dividends that might be affecting it. We have to make sure we're taking into consideration everything when we're putting together a plan around Social Security.
And don't really just plan on going down to the Social Security Administration to help them, have them make this decision for you or help them plan. They're not financial planners. They're not even allowed to ask about other potential sources of income. They aren't going to get into the pensions. They aren't going to look at the retirement accounts. The only way to make sure that you're optimizing your Social Security is to make sure that you're not just focusing on the investment strategies, although very important. But if you're only focusing on investment strategies and not how to take this money back, if it's not about how to make it tax efficient like Social Security can do for you, or if it's not about protecting from sequence or returns risk, making sure there's enough mailbox income so the next time the market correction comes along that you can spend in confidence, well, that's where we see real mistakes being made. Because even those of you that have had an average or maybe slightly above average income, many of these traditional rules around Social Security and the Social Security rules that maybe you've read about, they aren't going to apply to you. For example, if you were to follow traditional rules of thumb that say that you should delay your benefits until you're both 70, it can actually end up costing you a small fortune over the rest of your retirement years. Why? Because when you consider the impact of things like taxes, required distributions, additional Medicare premiums, spousal benefits, the actual net income can end up being far less. Now, that's why we are making a very special offer here this morning on Secure Retirement Radio just for the listeners that are joining us on this morning's program. You can learn exactly how you can get more income when you file for your Social Security with the free tailored Secure Retirement Social Security analysis. The analysis, it's going to show you all the different options on how to claim your benefits. We're going to look at what if you take it early, what if you take it late, what if you take it at full retirement. We're going to look at every single option. We'll explore this with you so that you can make the best decision for you and your family, and that you're going to wring out every nickel of this very important benefit. I'm going to ask, this is really most appropriate for somebody that's saved at least $500,000 in retirement accounts and that you have not already filed for Social Security. But if you'd like to get a complimentary Social Security analysis, get the Secure Retirement Social Security analysis, this is the only place you can get it, then call and join us right now. We can do this virtually. We can do it face-to-face, but the number is 952-777-8838. 952-777-8838. If you're seriously interested in how to get even more income when you file for your Social Security, then don't wait. Give us a call. Let's sit down. Let's show you how to optimize this benefit. We're going to get bombarded with calls as we do this. Every time we talk Social Security, we do. And the calendars are going to fill up fast. So give us a call right now to make sure that you can reserve your spot. 952-777-8838. 952-777-8838.
When we come back, how other people are successfully generating income in retirement today without betting the farm.
That's right. That's Sam Andrews joining us this morning. We also got Dylan Malberg. I'm Joe Lucy, Certified Financial Planner. More with Secure Retirement Radio in just a few minutes.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio. He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. You may not realize this, but he's kind of a big deal. Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio with your host, Joe Lucy.
You know, a lot of us retirees or soon-to-be retirees, well, you might find yourself stuck between a rock and a hard place. You get next to nothing when you put your money into CDs or savings accounts. Not what we used to get anyways, and it's a game of craps if you're only investing in the stock market, or maybe it's some bond mutual fund. How do you safely get and generate income in a retirement today, money that's going to last a lifetime? Welcome back to Secure Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy, Certified Financial Planner. I got both Sam Andrews and Dylan Malberg joining us this morning, and we've been talking about why or how you can plan around possibly retiring unexpectedly. We've seen this more and more with all the COVID stuff going on, and we want to make sure that you've got a plan in place, because there are 4 easy and simple steps that you can take today that can help you prepare better if this is in your cards. So coming up in this segment, why successful retirees are not built on your net worth statement, how much you've saved, but they're built on your ability to generate income, and income that's going to last a lifetime, and oftentimes income that's more tax efficient than other sources.
Exactly. And, we've talked about, reducing taxes, optimizing the Social Security income. Dylan, how can we successfully generate income in retirement today?
Well, I think we talk about generating income. We should ask what kind of income should we generate, and we talk about it all the time on the show. We talk about make sure we're looking at mailbox income. This money that's going to be hitting the checkbook each and every month, regardless of what's going on in Wall Street. And that's the families that have planned well and have put together a good plan around mailbox income are going to sleep a heck of a lot better at night when maybe the markets aren't cooperating, where at that certain time and they have to take that money out of the retirement account. So we look at how do we generate mailbox income, and we think about the kind of the classic mailbox income that we've kind of all talked about and we think about is pensions, Social Security, but what are other options for generating income in retirement?
Well, when 30 years ago almost, when I started in the industry, CDs were paying 5%, 6%. You able to amass $500,000, you were getting $25,000 a year off of this, and it was FDIC insured and backed by the federal government. The returns were anyways, but wasn't insured were the interest rates. And now that same $500,000, you'd be lucky right now to get $2,500. The income is just absolutely fallen, and maybe a bigger risk could be bonds, right? Bonds are paying very low rates of return, and there's an interest rate risk. As interest rates go up, the price of your bonds go down. It's a axiom. It's a law around financial planning. And if we are still looking at the old traditional 60-40 blends of stocks to bonds, well, then 40% of our portfolio could be in real trouble. I was recently reading an article from a good friend of mine, Wade Pfau. He's with American College and really kind of one of those guys that's really getting a lot of press and publicity about his expertise. He's a scholar. He's a much smarter guy than me. And he had an article that he was talking about on, the 4% withdrawal rate rule. That 4% rule that a lot of us have heard, and he's comparing it now in this corona environment. And his assumption is this. Back in the old days, we had Bill Bingen, the guy that is a CFP up in Sacramento, California. Back in 1990, remember that old rule you'd heard, you can always get 10% every 10 years in the market? You probably have heard that. So what Bill Bingen was noticing back in middle 90s is that a lot of financial advisors and a lot of families were retiring with this 10% every 10 years, and their expectation was that they could take out 7, 8, 9% of their account balances and not have to worry about running out of money. Bill Bingen didn't believe it, so he went and did the math. And what he did is he said, if we take an optimal portfolio, a 60-40 blend, and I look at what a withdrawal rate would be, he says a 4% withdrawal rate, adjusting for inflation over time, has a 96% certainty of not running out. The problem with Bill Bangen's math back in 1990s is that today, that 40% of the portfolio is no longer getting us the same returns. Right? As I said, when I got in the industry in 1994, 5-6% was easy to get out of CDs. That's no longer the case. If you haven't looked at a CD and what you can get right now, or if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if 40% of our portfolio is now subject to interest rate risk, interest rates rise and the bonds go down, low interest returns. You take all of this, and what Wade Pfau, again from the American College, has found and published here is that we have a 50-50 chance, if I'm using that 4% rule of thumb, of running out of money. The next question you want to ask yourself is, if it's a 50-50 coin flip chance that I'm going to run out of money, well, then what would be a safe rate of return? And as you might expect, it's something far less, 2.4%. Getting income today is harder than it has ever been. It's harder than our parents had. And the reality is that our parents were retiring, with pensions and more mailbox income. And here, now we're relying on our own sources of doing this and our own planning, because a lot of the investment advice we're getting is only about which is the right mutual fund, or should I be buying an annuity? The reality is, how do I get more from what we have? It's not about a net worth statement. It's about how do I generate my income, and how do I make that money I've set aside for retirement be a workhorse? It's about optimizing things like Social Security, as we talked about in our last segment. It's about reducing taxes. It's about making sure that we're making the right decisions around pensions, and that we aren't exposing ourselves to unnecessary risk.
And we talked about annuities. There's also real estate, dividend stocks. A lot of what we're seeing right now, because of where interest rates and where fixed income is going in general, is we tend to see families come in that are taking more risk in their portfolios than, one, they're comfortable with, and two, that they statistically should be taking at that point in time, as they're looking to transition in retirement. And we look at what happened here 13 months ago. Market's down 36%, 22 days, fastest stock market decrease in history, and we've recovered nicely from it. But what happens when we get in that 2000 to 2002 or the 2007 to 2009, where we have 1 to 2 years of just not good markets, how is that going to affect your retirement going forward?
Well, and really, for the most part, Dylan, for better than a decade, we really didn't have a lot of market volatility. We're starting to see more and more of it. But let's take a fictionary two families. We got Bert's family, we got Ernie's family. If those of you that are, Sam's a new father. He's probably watching a little Sesame Street these days. Anyways, you got Bert and Ernie's family, and they both have got two different plans. They're both spending $100,000 a year. The difference is that Bert optimized Social Security, has enough pension. And that $100,000 a year, he's got it covered. He doesn't have to withdraw money from the retirement accounts. Ernie, well, he was more of a he wanted to get that Social Security right away. There's no pension here, and he's taking $60,000 a year to get to his $100,000. Let's go back a little over a year ago. It's February, and they start talking about this crazy little virus coming over. And next thing you know, by March 23rd, we've lost 37% in a matter of 2 months. Now, Bert, he's got his bases covered. He's got his Social Security. He's got everything covered. He's covering 100% of his expenses. Now, he's not happy that he's losing money in the retirement accounts, but he's not forced to lock in losses. Ernie, on the other hand, he's got to take out $60,000 a year. He's taking $5,000 a month. He's locking in losses at market lows. He's selling investments at absolutely the wrong time. And if you look at the two portfolios a year later, while they might have both enjoyed some returns, we know that one was far more risky, and had this pandemic lasted a little bit longer, very likely old Ernie could find himself running out of money way too soon.
Yeah, and again, it's all about having a plan on. There are still a lot of options on how to generate income. There's just a lot of, again, with interest rates, fixed income, there's just a lot more obstacles, and it is harder today to generate income than it probably ever has been looking back historically. You
got to remember, I've said this earlier in today's program, that successful retirements, they're not built on a net worth statement. They're not built on how much money you've saved or what the assets are worth necessarily. They're built on your ability to generate mailbox income, money that's going to last a lifetime, money that doesn't get exposed to market risk. And as you've been saying, Dylan, or as we've been talking about, got Sam joining us as well, getting mailbox income today in low interest rate environment is so much harder than it ever has been. That's why I want to make a special offer just for today's listeners on Secure Retirement Radio. I'd like to sit down with you and show you some strategies on how you can turn your savings into investments. Turn that net worth statement, take the 401k balance, and how do we turn that into an income workhorse in your retirement? To get this, we're offering a secured retirement income analysis. Now, the complimentary analysis, it's going to show you the fastest and safest ways that you can increase your income that most people are overlooking. It's going to show you the key to protecting your principal from growing risks on Wall Street, how you can get even more income from Social Security benefits, and more. Now, remember, the analysis is free. There's no obligation, but you'll have to call us this morning. The number is 952-777-8838. If you're the kind of person that wants to get your money working as hard as it should be for you, then you can't afford to lose a dime. And this kind of analysis is right up your alley. We'll do this face-to-face. We can also do it virtually, whatever works for your situation. But you must call this morning, 952-777-8838, to get your secured retirement income analysis. It's 952-777-8838.
What's the very first thing you should do if you retire unexpectedly? We'll share the answer when we come back.
That's Sam Andrews. I got Dylan Wahlberg with me, and I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. More from Secure Retirement Radio in just a few moments.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio.
With his wavy blue eyes.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. You may not realize this, but he's kind of a big deal. Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio with your host, Joe Lucy.
You know, Woody Allen once told us that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. According to a recent study featured in USA Today, 60% of Americans, 6 out of 10 of us, are going to retire, not on our terms, but unexpectedly. Now, if you were forced to retire today, would you be able to retire in confidence? Are you at that point that you know you could walk away? Are you financially prepared? Welcome back to Secured Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy, certified financial planner. I got Sam Andrews. I got Dylan Malberg. And today we're talking about why you'll likely retire unexpectedly and 4 things that you can be doing today to make sure that you would be best prepared for that. Coming up in the final segment, why updating and rebalancing your investments should be job one. Should be the first thing you do on Monday morning or the day after you get forced to retire, and in preparation that this could be a real reality for you.
Yeah, and on Secure Retirement Radio this morning, talking about the 4 steps to help you prepare for it if you do find yourself in that 60% of Americans that do retire unexpectedly. And we talked about the first option is really, and it's most often the fastest and safest way to actually grow your wealth and increase your income. That's just by having a plan on how do I reduce taxes in retirement. We talked about the near perfect source of income, Social Security. It's tax efficient. How do we not only maximize but optimize it? We talked about the challenges of generating other income, mailbox income, that income that's going to be hitting the checkbook each and every month, regardless of what's going on Wall Street. And finally, the last priority is making sure that we're looking at the investments, making sure we're updating and rebalancing the portfolios consistently.
There's this sequence of returns risk that should be one of your number one areas of focus. If you're getting ready to retire, or maybe you're getting to a point that you could find yourself retiring unexpectedly, protecting yourself within the golden decade between the ages of 5 years before retirement to 10 years after. I often talk about the golden decade of being 59 and a half to 70. But if you're retiring early, you need to make adjustments. But it's about making sure that you can protect yourself from market value adjustments because, Sam, sequence of returns risk is something that everybody needs to be focusing on, right?
Well, exactly. And I think it's only enhanced for folks that are in that golden decade, right? If we have a large market downturn early on in our retirement years, that could have a significant impact on how long our money is going to last.
And, you know, the thing is, a retirement plan is not just built on investments, and although we're talking about protecting you from sequence of returns risk, which involves the investments and the portfolio structure, it's really not just on that. I mean, think of it like this. There are 3 risks in retirement that we should be addressing in our retirement planning. There's always this risk required. You can't just, especially in a low interest rate environment, if you put all your money into CDs right now, you're safely getting 0.5%, but the inflation could gobble that up. You're safely losing money. On the other extreme of this, a lot of times our advisors, the 401k, they send off these reports, these little self-tests to figure out what our risk tolerance is, right? A risk tolerance is an emotional risk. A risk tolerance says that, you know, when the market goes down, am I going to freak out and sell out at the wrong time, or I'm going to be jumping on cryptocurrency at the highs? I mean, that's risk tolerance and chasing returns and the emotional risk. It's when all of a sudden last spring you were afraid to open up the 401k email that said that your returns were ready. There's also a risk capacity, and that's a numerical number. We all have a risk capacity number. A lot of times I don't see families are calculating that. It's that point that the account could withdraw early in retirement that would force you to run out of money way too early. The number one risk for retirees has always been losing or running out of money, living longer than you should. And that's why a lot of times what I hear from families when they're joining us at Secure Retirement, whether it's for the complimentary review or maybe they want the tax analysis or it's about the income analysis that they can get here, it always typically kind of comes to this. Families will explain to us that really what they want with their retirement planning is something that is going to allow them to spend in confidence, something that says, I'm going to be able to maintain my lifestyle and I don't have to worry about running out of money. If all those bad things happen or if there's anything that can go wrong, I want to know that I didn't make a mistake by walking away from work and I'm going to find myself having to rework again. The next thing families will say is, you know, because we talk a lot about tax planning here, is they want to see how they can reduce their taxes, something they may not be getting with their current investment advice. So they want to make sure that they got an income that can last a lifetime. They want to make sure that they can reduce their taxes. And the third thing, well, yeah, they want to grow their wealth, but not at the compromise of those first 2 areas. and making sure that we can protect ourselves from risk capacity. A sequence of returns risk. A market that goes down early in retirement is one of the best ways to make sure that we can protect those first two areas and yet still grow wealth without the compromise of income or taxes.
Yeah, and we look at a lot of families, they are, again, this risk tolerance. Maybe they're mostly all in stocks, and they have this inherent investment risk of what if the market doesn't cooperate. Then we have the other side of that says, I want to be in cash, only fixed income. Well, now we look at how is inflation, right? Just because you can't lose money doesn't mean doesn't have some risks associated with your portfolio. And we're going to see inflation start to becoming more and more in the forefront here as we go forward. Everyone has a right combination of what their portfolio needs to look like to accomplish their goals, and how do we incorporate that into an entire plan, bringing in taxes, income, investments, and making it work for you.
And, we oftentimes talk about the 3 levels of service that you can get when you're looking for financial advice. At the very base level is when you're doing it on your own. You got a Robinhood account, you got a Chucky Schwab account, you're buying and selling on your own. Maybe it's through Vanguard or Fidelity, where you're kind of on your own. Nobody's really making investment advices. Markets go down, the investment's a bad one. There's nobody else to yell at. It's all on you. The next level advice, though, is where I see a lot of families when they're coming in our office. They've had an advisor, but the advisor really just focuses on the investment strategies. The advisor is about sitting down and saying, here's how much risk you're taking. I think you should be taking this mutual fund and swapping it out for this mutual fund. Here's the returns last quarter, but it's really about investment strategies and returns alone. At the very top of that, though, is what we call a tax smart retirement plan. It's a holistic approach. It's about making sure that we're looking at how to take the money back, how to make it last a lifetime, how to reduce taxes, and how to grow wealth without the compromise of those other more important things. Because most people end up overlooking a very important thing. They overlook that the fastest and easiest way to shore up a retirement is by focusing on mailbox income. It's not about the net worth. It's about how to take this money back. So that's why we're offering this morning a very special secured retirement tax analysis, which includes an income analysis. To get yours, you'll have to give us a call this morning at 952-777-8838. When you call in, tell them you want the secured retirement income analysis and a tax analysis. The number is 952-777-8838. That's all we have time for this week. We'll be back next Saturday with more from Secured Retirement Radio. I'm Joe Lucy. Joining me this morning has been Sam Andrews and Dylan Malberg, and I think all three of us will be back again next Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend.
He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. And he's no ordinary Joe. You're listening to Joe Lucy on Secured Retirement Radio.